Welcome back to another episode of your Heat Latest. Happy Taco Tuesday, everybody. I'm Sam Shapiro. Be sure to drop a like on this video and subscribe to our channel. Marcus Smart potentially being swapped for Terry Rozier. Do you think that would have been a good move for Miami? Let me know in the comments what you think. Unfortunately, now that's looking like, well, it's not going to happen because the Lakers acquiring Marcus Smart on July 22nd on a 2-year, $11 million deal after the Wizards deciding to buy him out. And personally, I was a little frustrated after seeing that NBA insider Jake Fisher confirming that there were negotiations about a potential swap happening, that it didn't necessarily come to fruition. I personally really like Marcus Smart. I think he showed a lot of potential on that Boston Celtics team that couldn't quite get over the hump. But, since leaving Boston, going to Memphis, and now playing on Washington, we haven't really seen signs of that former point guard that once was on the Boston Celtics making a title run. So I think this would have been a great opportunity for him to be on a competing team that has a win right now type of mentality, swapping him for a guy like Rozier, who hasn't really been able to come into the score he once was on the Charlotte Hornets. So I definitely think it would have been a good opportunity for not just Marcus Smart, but also Terry Rozier to kind of revigorate their careers and a little bit more to their dominance on the court. I personally really like Marcus Smart because I believe he's one of the best on-ball perimeter defenders in terms of point guards in the NBA right now. And I think his two-way game would have added so much to Miami's backcourt. Let me know again in the comments if you agree with me or not, but I just think that Marcus Smart would have been a good add for Miami, and if they were only swapping Rozier for that, I don't think that would have, Miami wouldn't have been giving up a whole lot, or at least would have been getting some sort of value, would have definitely been giving them a little bit more financial flexibility, getting rid of Rozier's deal and then possibly picking up Smart for, maybe a deal like the Lakers got him for $11 million, but it'll be interesting to see if he can kind of come back into the player he once was a few seasons ago, now playing with a bunch of facilitators like Bronny, Luka Doncic, and of course LeBron James. So kind of unfortunate to see him go to the purple and gold officially on July 22nd, but it's interesting that there were talks about a potential swap going on between the 2 point guards looking to become better, looking to, become versions of themselves that they once were. So kind of unfortunate, but I'm not totally upset. Rozier's still a very solid point guard, averaging 11 points per game with Miami so far, and there's no reason he can't turn it around at any point, at least this upcoming season. So it'd be interesting to see that. But another swap that I saw that could be interesting for Miami involving Rozier could have been for the likes of Nikola Vucevic. Vucevic being part of the potential trade that I saw in an article from July 20th involved Vucevic and Io DeSumo involving Rozier and Pela Larson and a 2027 second-round pick. I think in terms of that, Miami's given up a little bit too much just because I just like how Pela Larson has developed over the summer, and I think giving up that much in the backcourt to acquire Vucevic wouldn't necessarily be worth it. However, if Miami does acquire Vucevic in that deal, definitely adding a lot more in terms of strength in the front court with picking up Vlad Golden over this summer league, this past off season, and then developing Kalel where you kind of have a little bit more at the 5 spot that we wouldn't need a guy like Vucevic to come in, but having also a foreign center like that who's clearly got prowess rebounding would free up a lot for Bam to kind of move more into a permanent role at the 4 spot, which is personally where I think he thrives better. Really could fluctuate between the 4 or 5 and be a great asset for Miami, obviously. But I think having Bam at the 4 and bringing in Vucevic at the 5 would definitely would be pretty solid for Miami's front court. And but I don't necessarily love that Miami would have to give up so much in terms of their backcourt just to pick that up as well. So let me know in the comments if you think that would be Miami maybe giving up too much, or it would be cool picking up a 2-time All-Star like Vucevic, giving up some of those assets in the backcourt. I think there are definitely some pros and cons for both teams. And DeSumo, also pretty solid guard. He's had a pretty solid tenure on the Bulls. And, it's not like our backcourt would be completely losing everything in that regard too. Just also not loving to have to give up some sort of draft capital, but could be an interesting trade for both teams, and hopefully Miami wouldn't be giving up too much, at least to acquire an all-star big. I don't know. I think both sides kind of gained something from it, and it would allow Bam to play a little bit more flexibly, at least in Miami's backcourt, only giving up Rozier. And again, would definitely give Miami a little bit more flexibility in terms of financial cap space going into the 2027 season as well. So I don't necessarily know what that would entail in terms of signing Vucevic in the future, but let me know in the comments if you think that would be a decent trade or not, if Miami would be giving up too much involving that trade to the Bulls. And yeah, no, I just think it would be, it's definitely a good possibility, at least to strengthen Miami's front court while giving up a little bit, in my opinion, too much in their backcourt. Moving on to how the 2025 offseason has shaped up for Miami so far. ESPN released a grade of how they believe every team has navigated their offseason, and they gave Miami one of the best grades out of the entire article, giving Miami a B+, comparing that to the Los Angeles Clippers, who recently just picked up a lot of veteran players trying to rebuild their roster, especially after Miami kind of stealing Norman Powell from them. ESPN going on to say that this was a better offseason for Miami just because it was an opportunistic offseason for the Heat, who took advantage of the money they were able to save, getting rid of Duncan Robinson for Simone Fontecchio and converting that into getting a scorer, like I just mentioned, in Norman Powell, now kind of making up for the lack in points Miami now was almost kind of missing because of dealing Jimmy Butler right around the trade deadline. They said because of those solid moves going into the offseason, and then in addition to just that, re-signing a guy like Davion Mitchell, definitely continuing to add to the front court, it definitely helped with all of that complementing Jimmy Butler's departure in February, keeping Miami's books clear for now, as Miami trying to acquire a little bit more cap space in 2027. So being able to pick up a guy like Norman Powell, really helping Miami on the scoring front, but then also being able to get rid of Duncan Robinson in that regard, being able to keep some sort of scoring on that forefront while also freeing up some cap space, definitely had ESPN saying that Miami ranked Miami pretty high on their list. The Rockets and the Hawks, I believe, both had the highest grades on that article, both receiving A rankings, but it was nice to see that ESPN also kind of agreeing with a lot of you in the comments, saying that Miami had a very efficient offseason, so to speak, and I couldn't agree more, just because of the Powell trade, getting a 20-point score for, not really a whole lot. So let me know in the comments where you would grade Miami's offseason, if you would give it an A, you would also agree with ESPN, give it a B, or you'd say it's a little bit worse just because of the lack of them maybe signing some potential veterans. Kevin Durant was a big subject for a lot of people, but he's also a little bit on the older side, and Miami would have had to give up quite a bit. And, a lot of people also not super happy that Duncan Robinson was going either. But on the contrary, a lot of people saying that defensively he was a bit of a liability and it wasn't the worst thing in the world that he wanted to walk for a little bit more money. So I definitely see both sides of the argument saying that Miami might not have done enough this offseason, but in the grand scheme of things, they were pretty opportunistic and definitely made the most of some assets they were able to acquire without having to spend a whole lot of money and really give up a whole lot of players. So I think in that regard, they definitely had a very productive offseason, and I'm really hoping that it pays off. And like I've been saying before, hopefully contributes to them making a solid playoff run and maybe being a 6th seed in the Eastern Conference. But we'll just have to wait and see on how that's going to pan out right now. On today's What If segment that I have prepared for this Tuesday, if Miami's big three decided to stay together, we're still in the month that right around the 15-year anniversary of the big three kind of forming in South Beach: LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade. I wanted to play the hypothetical what if Miami decided to stay together, what that would necessarily look like if, when the talks of it were beginning, LeBron was joking, not 4, not 5, not 6, but maybe 7. If they had decided to stay together after losing to the Spurs in the NBA Finals, would they have won 3, 4, maybe even 5 NBA titles together? And I think that was a very interesting take, because I was thinking about some of the teams that that big three would have had to face off against if they decided to stay together. Granted, Chris Bosh eventually suffering blood clots just a few years after the big three kind of split up would have ultimately tore things down, whether they decided to stay together or not. But I mean, LeBron ultimately would go and play some of the best basketball continue to play some of the best basketball in his career on the Cavaliers after deciding to go home. But it's interesting because they would have had to go up against the Warriors dynasty to kick things off, which LeBron ultimately had to face himself that first year with Kyrie and Kevin Love not being able to stay healthy at kind of the times that it mattered most. But, even just looking at this first 2014 Golden State, this 2014-2015 Golden State Warriors team, I mean, they had a lot of sneaky depth to them. Andre Iguodala, obviously a key player in guarding LeBron each time they faced off with the Cavaliers when LeBron decided to make his way back. But you've got a really, really solid version of Klay Thompson. I would argue, some of the best basketball he played while he was there. Harrison Barnes, a really underrated small forward at the time. Draymond, before he's kind of washed, in my opinion. Andrew Bogut, former number 1 overall pick to the Milwaukee Bucks. David Lee was also on that team. Maurice Spates was there. And Leonardo Barbosa was also there. I'm sorry if I botched his name, but definitely a lot of sneaky depth to that team that I feel goes pretty forgotten. And I think Miami's big three might not have had the easiest time in the world. Maybe that 2014-15 season they could have bounced back and won just because that was the first Curry-led team that was able to make the NBA Finals. But one of the best shooting backcourts of all time in the Splash Brothers. It would have been very interesting to see how a Miami team that, wasn't making it rain nearly as much as that team from three would have faced off against them. And I definitely think it would have been at least a 6, most likely 7-game series between Miami's big three and Golden State's Splash Brothers. Let me know in the comments what you think if Miami would have brought home at least a couple more titles or maybe even one more, assuming that they stayed together after losing to the Spurs that in the 2013-14 season. I think they maybe could have. I think there's a pretty good chance they could have beaten Golden State in 7 games the first go around, but I think after that, it pretty much would have been all said and done, and the Warriors would have pretty much dominated otherwise. But definitely an interesting what-if conversation. If Miami were to stay together, would they have lived up to the hype, winning not 4, not 5, but 6 titles? I think they could have maybe squeezed one more out, but let me know in the comments again if you agree with me or not. That's going to do it for this Taco Tuesdays episode of Your Heat Latest right here on FanArc. Thanks again so much for joining me. I'm Sam Shapiro. Have a great day.